Hello YouTube and welcome back to a banger of a video. Today we have day 50 in psychology every day. Today is going to be a bit of a longer video and I hope that's okay because we have a big subject to cover. And it's sort of a day 50 special, but also I've been holding on to this subject for a while and it's going to take a bit longer to explain. So I hope you have the time because it is going to be a really good one. Like the thumbnail and the title suggests, this video is about Carl Jung versus Carl Rogers and, their ideas, because one of their ideas is sort of in the similar context or whatever, and I want to break it down and pit these two against each other, especially when it comes to this idea. So let's get right into it. I'm going to switch. Here we have Rogers' congruence theory, and when you're talking about self-realization, that is what we're going to talk about today. And what does that mean? Now, I've actually added some things to Rogers. Basically, if you talk about his original theory, he talked about your values, your thoughts, and your actions. And the star is to remind me to tell you that your speech, what you say, is your actions as well. Then I've added your feelings and, your place, your context, your environment, so to speak. And as you can see, they're all over the place. They're not in line. And this is what's called incongruence. When your thoughts doesn't match your values, your feelings doesn't match your thoughts, your actions doesn't match anything, and neither does your place. And basically, this was one of the main things that Rogers talked about as, mental not health, right? Bad mental health. And he called this incongruence. Now, congruence is when your values, your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, and your place are in line. They are, congruent, simply. Clever, huh? And like I said, his original idea was your values, your thoughts, and your actions. But I added feelings and your place. So congruence in this context would mean that you believe in your values, you feel what you think and what you value, you do it and you say it, and you do and say all of these things, and that you are in the right place. That also goes together with all of this. So some example of this with incongruence is, cheating, lying, cheating on your spouse, perhaps. If you're married, your actions should match your values. Not standing up for yourself means that, your actions doesn't match your feelings. Succumbing to group pressure is when your actions doesn't match your values as well. And saying things that you don't believe in. And, this is a super clever model, very strong, especially if you add the things that I added, which is, from reading Jung that we are going to talk about in a minute. Cognitive dissonance is when your actions and attitude doesn't line up, and this is a huge theory that has been scientifically proven, which of course goes into this. But this basically means that you don't feel good when these two don't align, and it forces you basically to change one of them. And usually it actually changes the attitude, which is super interesting, because this means that if you do something and you say something, you'll start to believe it, even if you didn't in the first place. We can talk about this in another video, but this is one of the reasons why speech and language is super important. So this is Rogers' congruence, and against it we have Jung's individuation. And, I'm basically going to talk about this for 10 minutes or whatever, but I could talk about it for 10 hours. But as you can see, this is you with the chains on you. You got the chain and the ball, and there are parts missing. You even got a, collar on your head with a padlock. And of course, there's your shadow. And these missing pieces, as well as the chains, which comes from the superego and the id. The superego is internalized rules, basically, when you're raised by your parents and society, that creates a superego. And the id is your biological impulses and, your animal self. And these act as chains on your free will. So Jung did believe in free will, in contrast to Freud. However, he believed that it required you to become whole and free. So you have to free yourself of these chains and, repair yourself and explore the shadow. And you have to, introspect, look at the chains, look at the shadows, and look at the missing pieces, face them, investigate them, build, or, remove the chains. And then you can become whole and free. And basically, it's very interesting. Of course, it's a very, very, very deep theory. If Roger's theory is a bit more easy to comprehend, Jung's takes a lot of time. But if you think of a person that doesn't have a lot of free will, for me at least, I think of a teenager. They act very much in groupthink. They all dress the same, they all act the same, because of hormones and because it's, that time of your life. They have spent the last 10 years being raised by someone, and they have a very strong superego and an id that is in conflict with each other, which creates a very predictable behavior. Animals are also, predictable in that manner, because they are basically only the id if they are not a trained dog. But when talking about a child, especially a very young one, is free, actually. So even if they don't have a strong rational mind yet, they haven't really gotten any shadows, chains, superego, id. They might have missing pieces, but one of the things that the individuation is for is sort of becoming the child version of you as well, but with a more developed mind, of course. And when talking about this, the chains, the shadows, and the id, they are the unconscious, and they will in various ways control your behavior, which will control your life, which will create chains, shadows, and id, which will control behavior, which will control your life, and on it goes. When thinking about it as a computer, now it is not obvious if Jung talked about you as, are you, your rational mind, or are you your soul, or whatever. But if you think about a computer, it has lots of things on it, Word and perhaps games and whatever else. And if you have the internet, of course, you have super duper a lot more. But let's say you are a person that doesn't really know anything about computers, a caveman, basically. If you were to stumble upon a computer, you might not even see what the internet part is, because you would have to click on the browser or whatever, and then you get, this entire huge world of the internet. So someone that doesn't understand a lot about computers might not notice the difference between a computer with or without internet. And that is sort of my view, at least, on free will, that if you don't really understand people, what they are made of, and understand free will and the soul and whatever, it's very easy to look at a person and, don't really see what the free will or the soul is. But when you do, tap into that and you can identify it, you see this, vast expansion of what it is. And basically, let's say that your soul or your conscious or whatever is the internet signal to the computer. But if it's bad and blocked by shadows and the chains and the id, and a shitty computer, bad connection and whatever, then it's not really gonna affect the output of the computer very well. Or let's say you have a signal to a radio, and if the signal's really bad, then you're barely gonna hear anything. But if the signal is perfect, it is unobstructed, you're going to get a very clear song, and you're going to get, access to everything, everything. And that is one of the ways of thinking about the soul in this manner, and that it is limited by the obstacles of your psyche, which is, these chains and shadows, like we talked about. Now let's look at it. So you are you, and basically you might be your soul, according to, this theory. Now the collective unconscious is actually another thing, which is basically legacy that is inherited down via your culture. I think I'm going to tell you, I know this quite well, but I'm not going to speak super duper certainly on this, because it's quite deep, quite complicated. But as far as I understand it, the collective unconscious is basically legacy and can be compared to memes. So, is sort of the chimera, a chimera, this crazy animal that is a lion and a griffin and whatever. I'm not going to even try to draw it right now. The symbol of the chimera, would that exist in a completely different sort of time? If we just started over humanity, would it still exist? Probably not. But it is an inherited symbol, and that is part of the collective unconscious. And, this is super weird, but it has been proven that, children has dreamt of things, symbols that exist in the collective unconscious without ever seeing this. So, a child might dream of a chimera. And how this works, we have no idea. And many people will, of course, deny that this happens, but it is one of the things that Jung got a lot of critique for, saying he was overly mystical or spiritual or whatever, but there is something to it. And if you think about it from a neuropsychological or biological standpoint, it is basically inherited memes. Super weird. But anyway, something here will be the signal that comes through. You can also think of it as, the iceberg, where this is your conscious and this is your unconscious. And basically, to get rid of the shadows, the missing pieces, and the chains, you have to explore this until everything is conscious. And this is basically learning about yourself. What drives you? What issues do you have? What, subconscious conditioning do you have? What patterns do you follow, until you are aware of everything? Because when you become whole, you will become free, and then you have free will, and then you will have completed the individuation process. I like to think of it as restoration, because you fix the holes. And, that is basically the gist of it. And I like both of these theories, but I think that honestly, because it is much more all-encompassing. Because when talking about Jung's individuation theory, I think it's a beautiful, beautiful, just over. It covers your whole life, and it's very deep, very well thought out, and Rogers sort of missing some of the most important pieces. Like I said, his original theory was just that your values, your thoughts, and your actions need to match each other. Sorry, and it's a bit shallow. I'm sorry to say. Like almost all humanistic psychology, it's a bit shallow, a bit weak, especially when you have such enormous shoulders to stand on, because humanistic psychology has taken things from philosophy and religion and could do so freely, and there's just an unbelievable amount of deep knowledge and wisdom to be gained there. It's sort of like if a psychologist would they would think of that 3 times 3 is 9, and then 9 divided by 3 is 3, and be like, whoa, I just discovered this amazing theory. And of course mathematicians would be like, Jesus Christ, man. And that is basically how the philosophers and the deep thinkers think about humanistic psychology. So even if it's cute and sort of a gateway to deeper existential philosophy, it is a bit shallow. However, even though Jung wins this battle, I must tell you that Rogers is a legend in himself, because he didn't pioneer, the confessional therapy. Priests did that, and then Freud and Jung talked about it as well. But he really elevated it to an art form that has been very, very, very good and helpful for modern psychology, because that was a thing that was sort of lost in the transition from the confessional booth with the priests to therapy, and Rogers really cemented its place in therapy. So just absolute legend. But in my opinion, I think Jung wins this battle as well, and I might be biased, but I think Jung is going to take home all of these battles, perhaps. Anyway, thank you so much for all the subscribers. Thank you so much for all the likes. And thank you so much for all the comments. I hope you have a great day, and I'm looking forward to the next 50 days of psychology every day. Have a great day, everyone.